Tonight,
we're going to London.
The president heads overseas, calling on NATO members to share the burden.
The whole thing is a hoax. Everybody knows it.
As the Democrat-led impeachment inquiry shifts into high gear.
And on the trail, no malarkey. The Biden bus tour hits the road.
We're going to beat Donald Trump.
The former VP still leading the horse race as the rest of the Democratic pack jockeys for position. And
a day of terror on London Bridge. The stopgaps and rehabilitating terrorists. Plus,
the White House shows off, getting in the Christmas spirit by decking the halls. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. It's back to business for 2020 Democrats after a holiday weekend, and the rest of America, too. Welcome to Faith Nation, everybody. I'm Jenna Browder.
You got that right. I'm Eric Phillips. Thanks for joining us. Thanksgiving break was short-lived for the candidates who wasted no time getting back on the campaign trail in crucial early voting states like Iowa and South Carolina.
And with 16 Democrats still in the race, the top tier are trying to cement their lead, while others still hoping to break out and get that big moment. CBN News Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson has the scorecard. Abigail?
With just 2 months to go before the Iowa caucus, candidates are taking over the Hawkeye State with both a physical and digital presence. 5,000 campaign ads ran last week alone.
Just all of us help.
No question about the word of the next president of the United States.
Over the weekend, former Vice President Joe Biden launched his 8-day No Malarkey bus tour.
We're going the last 2 months here, and we're getting down to the stretch. And the time to, as they say in Iowa, the time to peak is right about now.
But in the latest Des Moines Register poll, 25% of likely Democratic caucus goers now say South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg is their first choice. That leaves Biden, along with Senators Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, in a virtual three-way tie for second.
In our White House, you won't have to shake your head and ask yourself, whatever happened to I was hungry and you fed me? I was a stranger and you welcomed me.
Buttigieg is launching a $2 million ad campaign in South Carolina this week, where latest polls show Biden holding a 20-point lead. And in New Hampshire, Senator Bernie Sanders holds the top spot, with Buttigieg not far behind.
Winning, winning, winning.
Another poll all campaigns are closely watching deals with impeaching President Trump. So far, support and opposition are pretty much split down the middle. Qualifying candidates will face off in another debate later this month, with only 6 making the cut thus far. The 4 frontrunners and Senators Kamala Harris and Amy Klobuchar. Reporting from Washington, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
All right, thank you, Abigail. On the impeachment front tonight, the White House refusing to play ball, declining an invitation to appear at this week's hearing in the House Judiciary Committee. President Trump lashing out, calling Democrats not nice for scheduling hearings during his overseas NATO trip.
It's going to be a tremendous boon for the Republicans. Republicans have never, ever been so committed as they are right now and so united. So it's really a great thing in some ways, but in other ways, it's a disgrace. It's a disgrace for our country.
This London trip coming as Democrats unveil the Intelligence Committee report on impeachment. They say it shows evidence of wrongdoing and misconduct in the president's dealings with Ukraine.
Here now to chop it up with us is Kurt Mills, senior writer with the American Conservative, and CBN News chief political analyst David Brody. Thank you very much for both of you joining us. We appreciate it. So, Kurt, to you first. What do you make of this move on behalf of the White House not to take part in these impeachment hearings this week?
They obviously felt that it would burden shift, is the term I think you're hearing out of them, if they decided to agree to it. There has been no indictment. The impeachment, remember, is an indictment. The House has not voted, and until the House votes, they feel they do not need to respond to it. And I think they're hoping that there's still a small chance that there's not going to be an impeachment, or that the Democrats realize that impeachment is probably a net negative for their political prospects and might scuttle the whole effort.
David, President Trump, he's in London, of course, at NATO, keeping busy. And this is part of the White House strategy, too, right? Giving off the appearance like he's busy working working amidst all of this chaos back here in Washington with impeachment.
Right, that's what President Clinton did back in the late 90s when impeachment was swirling around him. Act presidential. And, you know, we had one of President Clinton's top advisors, Mark Penn, go into the Oval Office, talk to Donald Trump about how to kind of, you know, work this impeachment situation at the time. So, yeah, there's a visual here. And as it relates to NATO, I mean, look, he's going to go to NATO, and he's going to have some good news to report. Many of these NATO countries now penning up more money than they did in the past. So he's got a good narrative to tell, at least at NATO. They're scared of him over there.
Well, when you put those two strategies together, not participating in the hearings and looking presidential, is that going to work for him?
I think this is obviously a trying time and an inflection point for Trump. He has made making the NATO countries pony up more a signature item of his presidency. I think that for at least a lot of the European countries, this is sort of a wait-and-see approach to see if the president is removed or to see if he is reelected. But if he basically stands tough and looks strong enough and is reelected and is not impeached and removed, they're going to have to deal with him, and he's going to look like that he called their bluff here.
Let's talk about 2020. You know, Joe Biden, he's still leading in a lot of polls among black voters. What can other candidates do, like Pete Buttigieg or Elizabeth Warren, to maybe take at least a piece of that pie?
I'll be honest with you. I think much is made about them trying to take a piece of this pie. Look, Joe Biden's firewall is South Carolina. We know that. That's where he's got to do well. But here's the problem for Biden, and what could be good news for Elizabeth Warren and Buttigieg, in answer to your question. If one of them, both of them, wins Iowa, New Hampshire, and then all of a sudden there's momentum, right? And, you know, we talk a lot about Biden's appeal to black voters, but the truth of the matter is voters, whether they're black, white, Asian, Hispanic, doesn't matter. They want to go with a winner. They want to back a winner. So if you start to see a winner start to emerge out of those first 2, 3, 4 states, then all of a sudden I think the calculus shifts a little bit, and I think those numbers creep up. Whether you're Elizabeth Warren or Pete Buttigieg, the winner is the key.
Well, everybody right now is talking about this video of Joe Biden on the campaign trail. Kurt, he's talking about, you know, leg hair, children jumping into his lap.
Not a good combination.
It has a lot of people, shaking their head. What did you make of this? Is this just another Joe Biden moment? You
didn't think it was well worded? I mean,
I don't know, did you?
I guess my view is that I'm a little bit skeptical that people know who Joe Biden is. It's a little bit like Trump with the gaffes last cycle. I don't think anyone's going to change their vote on it. That being said, I think this race is properly set at this point to not have a front runner. And I think, just to Dave's point, that's why you see someone like Bloomberg looking at this. So I think, obviously, if somebody wins the first couple of races and consolidates support, that's a huge problem for Biden or anybody else. But if there's a chaos scenario, say a Buttigieg wins Iowa, a Warren wins New Hampshire, a Bernie Sanders wins Nevada, and Biden wins South Carolina, then it's basically a 4 or 5-way race heading into California, and someone like Bloomberg or someone else thinks they can steal it.
All I know is Donald Trump said you'd be so sick of winning when he's president. I think the gaffe machine for Joe Biden is sick of winning, because it's winning a lot in this campaign.
Not sure there's ever a good time to talk about leg hair. I'm just saying.
That's right.
Kurt, David, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Well, to London, where people are still reeling after a deadly knife attack.
Police say the suspect was a convicted terrorist who had been released from prison just last year. They say 28-year-old Usman Khan started stabbing people Friday during an event near London Bridge. Now, 5 people were injured, 2 of them died. The attack came to an end when members of the public tackled the knife-wielding man to the ground using, among other things, a fire extinguisher and a narwhal whale's tusk. Police ultimately shot and killed Khan. Now, Khan served 6 years in prison for his part in a plan to blow up the London Stock Exchange before being released on parole. And these are the kinds of incidents that make people question. Can terrorists truly be reformed, or is the public in imminent danger once they're released back into society?
The only things being allowed off the ground are rescue helicopters, police helicopters.
Many of us will never forget the horrors of 9/11. Nearly 3,000 people died from the work of terrorists living outside of our borders. We also learned some Americans worked with them in some capacity. John Walker Lind, born in Washington, D.C. and raised in San Francisco, converted to Islam as a teenager. Lind then traveled to the Middle East, trained with a radical Islamic group, and ultimately joined the Taliban, which has ties to al-Qaeda, the group behind 9/11. After his capture by American forces, Lind was sentenced to 20 years in prison. He got out in May after serving 17 of those years. More Americans turned terror sympathizers will be released in the coming years.
Humans aren't light switches. We don't go on and off, right? We're not binary.
William Braniff is the director of START, a University of Maryland research center that uses behavioral and social science to study terrorism.
What motivates terrorist behavior, what makes terrorist groups more or less lethal over time, and then what can we do to prevent terrorist organizations from being successful?
Braniff says as Lind and others like him re-enter society, their key to success can basically depend on you and me.
One of the things that we find from research, this isn't from my opinion, this is from research, is that one of the best ways to minimize violence and concerns regarding public health is to find a way to engage with these people without judgment. Really hard to do at an individual level, right? Not in my backyard.
And listen to what Braniff says he's heard from these former extremists about how they overcame their old belief systems.
No one could have beaten the hate out of me. It was actually love. It was actually people who were kind to me when I knew I didn't deserve kindness that planted this seed in me that I couldn't reconcile with my extremist beliefs. Once these people were kind to me, I realized that my hatred toward them was unjustified, and it ate away at my extremism until it was gone.
Former extremist Sammy Rangel helped start the nonprofit Life After Hate. He can personally attest to what Braniff is saying.
When we're acting at our worst and someone else can see right through that and still touch us with their own humanity, and it's enough to stop you in your tracks and wonder. I don't think that anyone is irredeemable. I don't think that anyone is beyond reach.
Johnny Spann disagrees.
It hurts. You never get over it. But
his son, CIA Special Agent Mike Spann, was the first American killed in combat after the 2001 invasion of Afghanistan. He died during a Taliban prisoner uprising shortly after interviewing John Walker Lind.
Yes, I do blame him for that, because all he had to do was open his mouth and say, "I'm an American. You're in danger. I'm in danger. Let's get out of here." I would hate to know that he was living next door to me or any of my kids or grandkids. Do you put a fox in a chicken house and expect the fox to change his ways? The common sense ought to come into play here.
From a practical standpoint, Braniff insists former extremists or sympathizers will be closely monitored.
So I don't think that John Walker Lind is going to get out of prison and have the time and space to engage in sophisticated plotting.
They tell us that, well, we're going to be monitoring. We're going to have a parole officer that's going to monitor him. They couldn't control this guy while he was in prison.
Well, Braniff admits there is no magic equation or surefire way to know whether someone is definitely rehabilitated, but he points out that love is the essential ingredient in making it happen. And doesn't that reflect what the Bible says about love covering a multitude of sins? 1 Corinthians 13:13 says, "And now abideth faith, hope, and love, these three, but the greatest of these is love."
Coming up, two Christian evangelical leaders team up to fight for Jesus and for the Constitution.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug-of-war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline, Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
One of the world's largest Christian universities is opening a new center to fight attacks on Christianity and the Constitution.
Liberty University President Jerry Falwell and Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk are establishing the new think tank in Lynchburg, Virginia, to push back on a perceived attempt by the media, academics, and politicians to convert Christians into socialists. The Falkirk Center hopes to answer a common question: was Jesus Christ a socialist?
And with us now is Jenna Ellis, ambassador for the Falkirk Center and a Trump 2020 legal analyst. Jenna, good to have you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, especially on this great occasion to talk about the Falkirk Center.
Yes, well, tell us about your role with the center and why the need for it now.
Absolutely. So I'm a constitutional law attorney and also, of course, a Christian. And so when we look at the culture right now and we see especially young people who call themselves Christians, but then they have a disjointed and confused worldview on everything else. They have just a kind of a hodgepodge or selection of this smorgasbord of their view on economics, on government, on private enterprise, on philosophy, on so many different things that it's not really comprehensive. And so what we want to do is proclaim the truth of Christ, and that the foundation of the Christian worldview actually informs us in everything else that we understand about the truth of the reality to which God presented us. So my role is to explain the truth of government and to help people understand that when we look at American government and we look at the founders who said specifically in the Declaration, we hold these truths to be self-evident. Truth is self-evident, that all men are created equal. They're endowed by their Creator, not their government, with certain unalienable rights. And so the only goal of government and the only mandate for American government is to preserve and protect those God-given rights. So when you and I talk about having a right to free exercise of religion, that's not because of the First Amendment. It is a God-given, unalienable right that our government is obligated through the First Amendment to preserve and protect.
Now, here's a challenge. Many of the younger voters of the younger generation believe that socialism is, this great thing. You're finding it sort of a growing trend among them. Even some saying that Jesus was a socialist. What are you all going to do to come against that?
Yeah, so we're going to actually use the same tools that the left is using through the media, through entertainment, through all of these social media influencers, and really take back the narrative and try to explain this in these quick sound bites and let people understand that not just these top-level issues and not just that socialism by itself is okay, or that pro-choice, for example, by itself is one isolated issue, but how all of these things comprehensively have to come back to the root of the Christian worldview and the reality to which God presented us. So, for example, we know that our government has very limited authority. We can't go to Congress and say, let's all get together and repeal the law of gravity. Wouldn't that be great for America? We know we don't have that authority. In a similar way, we don't have the authority to go against the moral law of God.
All right, Jenna Ellis with the Falkirk Center. And also, we should mention a Trump 2020 legal analyst. It's great to have you. Thank you for being here.
We'll talk impeachment next time.
Yes, yes, of course. That's what everybody's talking about. Yeah. But until then, follow us at the Falkirk Center on Facebook and Twitter.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jenna.
Thank you.
Up next, the sexual abuse crisis in the Catholic Church deepens with a surge in lawsuits that could cost billions of dollars.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
And ministering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
a 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to CBNNewsChannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
The sexual abuse crisis in the Catholic Church is deepening, with new claims against the clergy expected across the country.
And new rules for sexual abuse claims are extending or suspending the statute of limitations in 15 states. That means a surge in new cases stretching back decades are expected to hit the Catholic Church. The Associated Press is reporting the legal reckoning could cost the church over $4 billion in payouts for upwards of 5,000 new cases.
And joining us now is Father Thomas Risa, Jesuit priest and senior analyst at Religion News Service. Father Risa, thanks so much for joining us today.
Sure, I wish it was a happier topic.
I know, indeed. Well, this legal reckoning we were just talking about, how is this going to affect the Catholic Church here in the U.S.?
Well, it's going to affect it very negatively, but we have to acknowledge the great pain that these bad priests put on these poor victims. I mean, it was a tragedy, it was a sin, it was a crime, and the church needs to reach out and try and do whatever it can to help these people. That should be its first priority. At the same time, this is going to lead to billions of dollars coming from the church. It's going to lead to bankruptcies. We have to realize that. We have to face that. It's sad, but that's going to be the reality of what we're going to have to deal with in the future.
And what about the Vatican? Does it have a financial role to play in all of these abuse claims?
Well, the Vatican has been sued numerous times by lawyers trying to go after it, and every time they've lost. The laws in the United States, international laws, make it impossible to sue the Vatican. So it's simply not going to happen.
Well, is this change in the statute for limitations of sex abuse claims something the church has long feared?
Well, it depends what you mean by changes in the statute of limitations. See, you have to distinguish between criminal and civil law here. You can't change the statute of limitations for criminals going backwards. That's against the U.S. Constitution. You can change it for people who commit crimes now, so that we have more time to prosecute them in the future, which is good, and the church supports doing that. When you're talking about suing, then yes, you can change the laws and open a window so that people can sue the church for damages for things that happened 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. And that is, in fact, what is happening now. Now, that's going to lead to bankruptcies. And it's also extremely difficult to defend those cases because, you know, do you know what you were doing 30 years ago on November 3rd?
Right.
And do you have witnesses to come forward to verify that? So that's why we have laws dealing with statute of limitations, because it's very difficult to defend yourself under those circumstances.
Well, to your point, Father Reese, you know, many of these stories of sexual abuse by clergy go back decades into people's childhoods. What do these new rules do for these victims?
Well, it gives them an opportunity to sue the church and to get their day in court, presenting their case and forcing the church to stand, you know, the bishop or whoever knows anything about it, to come to court and testify.
All right, Father Reese, we have to leave it there, but tough topic. We appreciate you coming in today.
Sure.
Thank you. And we'll be right back.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5, Wednesday night at 9:30.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Ribbons, wreaths, and star-spangled trees. It is Christmas at the White House.
All of the holiday splendor was unveiled this morning by First Lady Melania Trump. This year's theme, the spirit of America. The White House Christmas decorations highlight the traditions, cultures, and history that tell a story of our nation. Decorations include handmade state flowers in the Blue Room, gingerbread landmarks in the state dining room, and the reasons for the season. A nativity display in the East Room. More than 225 volunteers from all 50 states helped bring Christmas to life throughout the White House. Tours of the decorations will take place through the end of December. And I must tell you, if my social media is any indication, the decorations this year are definitely a hit. Folks are saying they like them much better than some of the ones in the past.
And they're different. That East hallway,
yeah.
Beautiful. We got to get there.
Absolutely.
All right, that's all we have. That's all the time we have.
We'll see you back here tomorrow night.